Good afternoon. My name is Justin Chow, and today I'll be presenting our research on inverse reinforcement learning of multi-agent interactions. This study was supervised by Dr. Brokoslaw Laschowski in the Computational Neuroscience Lab at the University of Toronto. In computational cognitive neuroscience, observing what an agent does, the behavior you see on the left, is relatively easy. However, understanding the brain on the right, the why behind their actions, is quite challenging. The internal motivations and rewards that drive these actions are completely unobservable. That is, where the model in the center comes in. By improving computational models, we can bridge this gap and reverse engineer the process, providing a principled mathematical window directly into the agent's internal decision making. To achieve this, we use inverse reinforcement learning, a framework that recovers an agent's latent reward function from observed behavior, essentially solving the inverse of the optimal control problem. The current state of the art for solving these inverse problems is the switching inverse reinforcement learning algorithm. It can recover switching reward functions with short-term history dependency. However, the algorithm has a few notable limitations. Its empirical validation has been limited to single-agent spatial navigation tasks, like grid worlds, and its history-dependent modeling suffers from exponential complexity over long temporal horizons. Our study aims to address that first limitation. Our research question asks, can switching inverse reinforcement learning be used to reverse engineer interpretable principles, for example, long-term history-dependent rewards, that the brain uses to generate behavior and decision-making during multi-agent interactions? To address this, we adapted and evaluated the algorithm on a large-scale dataset of freely behaving agents engaged in social interactions. We train our algorithm using the Caltech mouse social interactions dataset, which contains over 9 hours of annotated video tracking two agents at 30 frames per second. The behavior is classified into four states: attack, investigation, mount, and other. To focus on meaningful behavior shifts, we compress this dataset by removing consecutive self-transitions. These process trajectories are then fed into our inverse reinforcement learning framework, shown here, which operates via an expectation maximization loop. Starting on the left in box A, we input the trajectories alongside our initial estimates for the mode-specific rewards and transitions. In box B, we begin the expectation step using soft Q iteration to compute the optimal control policy. In box C, that policy is passed to a forward-backward inference module, which mathematically estimates the probability that an agent is in a specific hidden mode, like mode 1, 2, or 3, at any given frame. Moving to box D, the maximization step, we use those mode probabilities to construct a surrogate lower bound function. This allows us to compute gradients and update all of our model parameters. This loop repeats until convergence, ultimately generating the final output you see on the far right, the interpretable reward manifolds, which we analyze as distinct motivational profiles alongside their specific control policies. Moving on to the results, this graph shows how well our model predicts the next behavior in a sequence across different numbers of hidden modes, the x-axis. This specific graph evaluates our second-order model, which uses short-term memory of both the current and previous states. First, all of our models outperformed random baseline. Training accuracy reached 85 to 88%, and test accuracy was around 76 to 78% compared to the 25% chance level. This shows that our model successfully learned real structural transition dynamics. Second, we found that k equals 2 hidden modes yielded the best generalization. Test accuracy peaked at 78.1%, did not improve when we added a third or fourth mode. This suggests that two hidden states are sufficient to capture the meaningful structure in these sequences. Finally, the train test gap remained consistent at roughly 10 percentage points across all models, meaning the extra states weren't causing severe overfitting. They just simply weren't adding useful information. Once we established that two modes worked best, we looked at the recovery reward maps to interpret them. Our algorithm was able to reverse engineer the behavior into two distinct biologically plausible profiles. For each profile, the y-axis is the current state and the x-axis is the potential next action, with the color representing the intrinsic reward normalized between 0 and 1. On the left, we discover what we call a cautious profile. Here, the reward for escalating into an attack is heavily penalized, dropping near 0 if the agent is currently investigating or mounting. Conversely, on the right, we discovered a volatile profile. In this hidden state, the reward for transitioning to attack is high regardless of the current state. This captures a motivational state where the agent is highly prone to aggressive behavior, irrespective of its preceding actions. While those reward maps show local step-by-step preferences, we also conducted analysis to see what broader short history sequences characterize these modes. We found that the cautious profile was dominated by other investigation alternation. It showed an approach withdrawal strategy where the agent repeatedly engages and disengages without ever progressing into recurrent aggression. In contrast, the volatile profile strongly favored investigation attack recurrence. The reward policy structure here captured a strong tendency for attacks to repeat once they started, which is consistent with the biological phenomenon of attack priming. Interestingly, for both profiles, sequences that included mounting were treated as attacks for suppressive. This aligns with definitions of mounting in cognitive science. To understand how these modes are distributed, we looked at the hidden mode segmentation across time. Each row here represents a different experimental trajectory, and the colors represent the assigned mode. We initially expected to see a lot of intra-trial switching, which would look like a single horizontal line rapidly alternating between light and dark blue, but instead we find that the segmentation is highly consistent. An entire trajectory typically stays solidly in one hidden mode for the duration of the experiment. This is an important finding that tells us the switching inverse reinforcement learning algorithm didn't just capture momentary frame-by-frame shifts in attention, but it also clustered the different agent pairings into overarching motivational profiles. Some pairs establish a cautious dynamic and stay there, while others establish a volatile dynamic from the start. This suggests that the underlying reward is influenced by the pairing of agents, which is consistent with observations in cognitive science that dominance relationships and social dynamics are often established early and persistent throughout an interaction. In conclusion, we demonstrated that switching inverse reinforcement learning can be used to reverse engineer interpretable rewards that the brain may use to generate behavior and decision making during multi-agent interactions. Quantitatively, our model predicts behavioral transitions with 88% training accuracy and 78% test accuracy, well above random chance. Beyond pure prediction, our model is interpretable. It successfully recovers distinct biologically relevant motivational profiles, separating cautious approach withdrawal behavior from volatile attack prime behavior. We also discovered that agents cluster into these overarching motivational profiles, maintaining a stable dynamic for the duration of the interaction. Building on these findings, future research should explore 1. Using causal transformer-based history encoders, and 2. Comparing the internal model representations against experimental measurements from neuroimaging for greater mechanistic interpretability and understanding of intelligence. Thank you.